it was really interesting. He talked about leadership in tribes and social media, and he actually goes back to like Henry Ford and manufacturing. So he came up with this incredible system for manufacturing cars. So being so efficient that they could produce like a zillion cars for the world and pay his workers 10 times what they were making previously. So that was it was a manufacturing idea that took over the world. And then marketing came along, and he gave the example of McDonald's. Okay, and that's mass marketing and how they grew. And he said, but today he says it's not about money and manufacturing and marketing. It's about tribes. Okay, and then he gave the example of Al Gore and climate change, and the example there was that Al Gore could not be everywhere. So he kind of, found like 1,000 people who were like-minded, and they kind of went out and evangelized. And so but at the very end, he had 3 questions. Okay, and I know lots of folks here, Health IT social media ambassadors, have got some burr in the saddle, bee in the bonnet, something that's really bothering them about the status quo, and they're trying to change the world. And so these are the 3 questions. Who are you upsetting? Who are you connecting? And who are you leading? And I think he means there to create a movement, to amplify, so to speak. And so Michael, how did I do in kind of distilling down the video?
I'd say you did pretty well. I think there's a few things that I would just add too. It's less about marketing and just about the science of spreading and evangelizing ideas. And I think social media and marketing platforms provide the opportunity to scale the ideas. And originally we talk about the ideas themselves, and I think that's where Seth starts in his video, in his TED Talk, is the idea was always manufactured from the top down. And essentially, when it comes from the top down, as an individual participating in the action to make the status quo better, it can feel very lonely, I think. When you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, you always say, like, what could I have done better? But I think we're asking the wrong question. It's like, what could we have done better? So I think what Seth is really trying to encourage us to do is to move the responsibility of an idea from the individual and share it with the community. So that way, essentially, we can scale it, and we can get other people who also connect on that slice of status quo that they also believe in too, and collectively start to ignite and catalyze progress. So, I just love his formula, because if you really think about it, if you look at the way that the science of community took hold within the primary and general elections, there was a movement of so many people, who were otherwise disenfranchised from the top down, but ultimately they found a rallying point. They created a grassroots initiative and started to really kind of get involved. And essentially, I think health IT is the perfect industry to adapt this process, especially with how thoughtful people are about making a difference in the industry, but also how many social media advocates we have in the industry too. So I think if we pair those 2 things together, we have the beginnings of what looks like a really transformational platform to grow ideas and to make an impact in a very convoluted and complicated environment that is healthcare.
Sumit, anything to add to Mike?
No, I think I agree with this. I would second the sentiment that Michael is saying, that it's taking an idea, an initiative from an individual to a community. And in the age we are living, it's different than what it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. And we have all these tools that are at our disposal. We have social media and digital. We're living in a digital age where it makes it's still convoluted, but it makes it easier to take an idea and that's something that you're passionate about, and instead of having it at an individual level, easily translate into a group or a community.
Now, so I've been going to HIMSS off and on since the early 90s. I'm not sure if they even call it, like, what. So HIMSS 2000, was that HIMSS 00? I mean, hashtag. Of course, that's before. Twitter, but and when I I know someone who was president of HIMSS in I think '84 or '86, and he said there were 400 or 500 people who met in a hotel someplace, and and when I attended, I think about 10,000 folks showed up, maybe 7,000, and I guess the question I have has to do with, you know, HIMSS being a HIMSS is more than a trade association, but I sometimes describe it that way just because other people know what trade associations are. So, you know, and it's obviously very important for leadership and encouraging leadership and funneling it and a platform and so forth. And, you know, I'm being, I guess, diplomatic, and that is that, you know, 10 years ago, before social media came along, you know, it was like HIMSS was up here on Mount Olympus, you know, and it was that top-down thing that Michael was talking about. Okay, and now, and when the conference got really large, like 20 or 30,000 folks, I actually stopped going for a few years because I just went and I felt alone in the city, which is like the most, you know, alone you can feel. And then when social media came along, that small town aspect of what it felt like when I first started going to HIMSS came back. Okay, so and then I thought of it not as tribes, but as like there were like a bunch of different small towns. There were, you know, and then it felt small again. Of course, now we look at we're going to see maybe 50,000 people here at the upcoming HIMSS, possibly. I'm just kind of curious, Michael and Sumit, on how you see maybe HIMSS's role evolving or changing relative to these new opportunities to encourage and support the health IT social media community.
I'll take a stab first, Sumit, and then you can jump in on any observations you've had. But you know, I think HIMSS has always positioned itself as a convener, at least internally. So I think, you know, when we have discussions behind closed doors and kind of in the process of planning our year and our annual conference, you know, and like you said, we're more than just a trade association, we're more than an event. I think, you know, we're a leader in a space where, you know, we can benefit ourselves and others by, you know, connecting the dots. So ultimately, I think the role of HIMSS is always going to stay the same, but I think maybe we need to do a better job of telling the story of what that role means, not only to us as an organization, but to all of you that are watching here today too, and we know what that translates into in terms of social media. So I think, you know, moving forward, the evolution of HIMSS is going to be more about our ability to convene the right people, to have the right conversations, you know, in a guided environment where there can actually be some tangible takeaways and start implementing them the next day. So ultimately, I think that's kind of where, you know, HIMSS has opportunity to evolve a little bit further using, you know, a very healthy and engaged digital space like social media.
Sumit?
Yeah, I would say one of the things, and this is a great point that you brought up, Chuck, is that HIMSS is it's a mega conference, if you may, where 50,000 people, let's say 2017, we will have that many. And there's a lot of noise. Last year in 2016, we had almost 200,000 tweets just around the conference. So there's a lot of noise. I think where we see one of the things we want to do as HIMSS, and especially from the social media team, is how you can utilize social media to make this experience where there's so much noise more personalized and more meaningful for you. And part of the things we want to do is keep educating the audience, the users, our social media ambassadors, anyone who's attending the conference, is how to use social media to make sure that you're talking to the right people, you're talking about the topics that you're passionate about, and make it a more intimate personal experience rather than getting drowned in this large noise. So everyone, there's a lot of meaningful conversation going on. So how to identify the ones that you want to engage in, how to find those, and social media helps us do that in a very simple. I don't want to use the word simple because there is a lot of different aspects involved in it. But that's part of the thing we want to do. We want to make sure that we educate our audience on how to use that digital and social space to make sure that they can get the best meaningful experience and a more personalized experience. Because a lot of and you said it yourself that when it became too large, you lost that personal feel, and that's when you stopped going. But with social media helping you make it more personalized, that's exactly what a lot of users want, is to have that intimate experience at the conference. And I think that's what we want to look forward to or educate our audience on how to use social for doing that.
Yeah, and I'll just add really quickly, sorry, Chuck, is meaningful use, lowercase, right? Is social media is a tool. I think we need to meaningfully use it in a way to, meet the needs of all the stakeholders that are at the show, that are either there for business or there for networking, or folks that are following along. Like, we have an opportunity to segment the conversation and personalize the experience based off of the needs and wants of the consumer. And, I think, right now is social media is not a strategy, it's a tool. So ultimately we need to use the tool to advance our ideas, the level of innovation we're seeing in the industry, and the overall collective strategy behind health information technology. So I think, I just wanted to throw that, that buzzword out there is meaningful use, but with lowercase letters instead of uppercase.
We have about 7 minutes left, and at that time, I'm going to start cycling folks through, and it's going to be women first. So prepare your elevator pitch, everybody.